And your body is a temple, and the temple is a prison, and the prison's overcrowded, and they know about the flooding. And the body politic is getting sicker by the minute, and the media is not fake. It's just very inconvenient. Hello and welcome. In today's video essay, we are going to be specifically discussing why I believe Amanda Palmer's There Will Be No Intermission, released in 2019, is the greatest album of the 21st century to date. But before we dive in, who is Amanda Palmer and what is There Will Be No Intermission? Amanda Palmer is an American singer and songwriter, especially known for her work not necessarily solo, but with her bands The Dresden Dolls and Evelyn Evelyn. However, There Will Be No Intermission was a solo album, and it was entirely crowdfunded via Patreon. The album was initially released in 2019, but had a promotional video released in December of 2018, still visible on Palmer's YouTube channel, which describes the 6-year odyssey of personal struggles and inspirations which led to the creation of the album, and sets the audience up with anticipation for what's to come. So, how was it received? There are sort of two camps in the interpretation of There Will Be No Intermission. On the positive side, I'd like us to look at a review from Punk News of There Will Be No Intermission, quoting that it is the most fully realized album of Amanda Palmer's career as a songwriter, and that you feel like she gutted herself writing it. This represents what I've come to think of as the layman's introduction to There Will Be No Intermission, something that feels incredibly honest, if a little unnerving and off-putting. On the other side, however, we have reviews like this from the platform No Depression. There Will Be No Intermission wants very badly to be fringe and daring and accessible and weird, but it is simply too obvious overall to hit the mark. Moreover, it critiques the album's length, clocking in at a healthy 78 minutes. So, taking this sort of duality of its interpretation in stride, let me tell you why exactly I think that, regardless of what others may believe, this is, in fact, the greatest album of the 21st century. First of all, I want us to think about what is great music and how do we define it. Next, why is an argument about great music important for talking about right now in the 21st century specifically? And lastly, why There Will Be No Intermission is an incredible case study of what makes music great and what makes music important to think about. Let's just start off with why we should even care. Why does music need to be categorized in these ways? Some of you may be familiar with the common critiques nowadays of shallow pop culture. From the escapist forums, this thread from January of 2011 quotes that modern music is mostly auto-tuned junk and is simply hard to listen to, lacking depth and originality. From The Spectator, its official Modern Music is Bad states the repetitive, loud, inert, droning, crunching, and infantile vulgarity of modern music as a common experience while listeners just sit back with bewilderment and think, how are we even listening to this? Now, this might be harsh, or it might seem unfounded, because modern music does go through stages. Everyone thinks that music is bad and poorly made, and then it becomes popular. So let's look at a popular album, which is largely lauded for its incredible insight and creativity, Bo Burnham's Inside. Inside was released in 2021 as sort of a commentary by comic songwriter Bo Burnham on his own experience with quarantine. The issue, however, with Inside, as it compares to a work like There Will Be No Intermission, which deals with similar themes of isolation and loss and sort of personal tell-alls, is that while Inside received significantly more popular support and success, it lacks a certain honesty and complexity. The musical themes are repetitive, they are easy to internalize, and while the lyrics mean a lot to a lot of different people, they don't necessarily reflect universal truths of experience. They're played up for comedy. It's an act, as Burnham states in his extremely popular song, Art is Dead, not from Inside, but from a previous album, Words, 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 I'm wearing makeup. It's not real. Everyone's so sick of personal opinions, though, so don't listen to me and don't listen to them, listen to experts. Experts like Gerald Levinson or David Zwirner. In David Zwirner's article for the New York Times, he talks about how art is a way of defining our existence. It is so essential to human experience that we're incapable of living in a vacuum without it. Art has been around for millennia, and thus art is extremely important. So caring about art, defining art, evaluating what is good art is just as important as being human because they are completely interlinked. Specific to music, Gerald Levinson, in his essay Evaluating Music, tries to explain how exactly we do that and how we take matter, living outside of a vacuum, incorporating everything that we know and all this art that we are so lucky to live with, and how we categorize it, how we think about it. So he defines music as so essential to experience, the things that we feel, the things that we have lived, which partially relates to how No Intermission is such an important album because it is fundamentally about experience. Palmer talks about how what she's gone through in the 6 years leading up to the album, the loss of a friend to cancer, abortion, a child, a miscarriage, all of these different aspects of human life, that's what makes art. That is essential to art. And so it's also essential to defining what good art is. Moreover, music adds something to our life, nuanced perception, something greater than ourselves. What does music, more or less any music, as Levinson says, offer that other arts and activities do not, or at least not to the same degree? It gives us more of ourselves. It gives us a window into the soul that it just isn't accessible through other mediums of storytelling, including visual art. And No Intermission is a prime example of how music captures this. In summary, There Will Be No Intermission is not the greatest album of the 21st century because it has the most listens, or because it had the greatest tour, or the coolest costumes when being performed, or even because it has the catchiest songs. There Will Be No Intermission is the greatest album of the 21st century because it is the only album of the 21st century that I have found that gives us an experience that feels completely immersive, that you cannot ignore, that is totally and completely real, that is honest, that is actually, not to sound stuck up about it, but that is actually art.